again for the beautiful, wonderful, amazing time that we spend together every week doing BetaCodex Live. I am Ryan Erickson. I do various and sundry things related to the BetaCodex, Red 42, and my own interesting venture. And with me today is the inimitable, always awesome Niels Pflaeging.
Hello, good morning, good now, Ryan. This is
And
our
a good,
13th session together. I hope this
yes.
will bring us luck.
Well, 13 is my favorite number, actually. That
Yeah,
comes back to me from a long time ago. I was a big fan of the American football quarterback Dan Marino. His number was 13, and there you go. And it has followed me through the years. So 13 is a good number for me. So the topic for today is beta consulting, consulting in the world of beta and the BetaCodex, as in we know what alpha is, and the consulting world has done its damage, or how has the consulting industry played into the alpha world of command and control, and what does it mean to be in distinction to that in the beta world and BetaCodex. So,
yes.
and as we were talking about in the pre-show, I did a little preparation this week. I picked up Mariana Mazzucato's new book, The Big Con. So you might think that's a little bit of a criticism of the consulting industry as it stands today, and
Yes.
what harms that may have done. So from my perspective, I have a take or two on what it means to consult in the beta world. Again, my first salvo there is about being in contrast to supporting a command and control point of view, and that however you engage with your client at the time, the person you're with, that when you are taking a stance as a trusted advisor as opposed to a snake oil salesperson, when you are a trusted advisor, it's important that you stand up for your beliefs, I believe, and what you believe is right for the client at that time. And that is definitely not the inhumane, authoritarian stance of command and control and of leading people and not being in service to them. So that to me is my first stance in terms of knowing that how I'm showing up with the client at that time is to be in service of, with us, for us, of the people who are in the organization at the periphery, in service of a market as opposed to in service of a management hierarchy. So
Yeah.
that's one thing. So that's my thing. How would you frame your own first step, or what's your opening to this conversation?
Yeah. I mean, you already mentioned Mariana Mazzucato's recent book, The Big Con, I think.
Yes, Big Con.
I did not read that yet, but I joined the consulting industry 20 years ago in 2003. And at the time, I thought that there were too many consultants already. Since then, everybody is a consultant. And of course, we're talking specifically here about something like management consulting, right? And of course, I always tried to be not just try to, I didn't just try to be on the right side of the consulting industry, but also wanted to challenge my thinking, critical thinking about consulting. And I brought for the intro here, I brought my top three, critical consulting books. First is Consulting Demons. I think the title says it all. Very critical, and it's not new. It's by Louis Pinot, and it must be from the 90s, I think, or from the 2000s. So Consulting Demons, pretty condemning about the consulting industry already. Then we have a little bit more on the humorous side, but very good. I think very, very good book. I'm Sorry I Broke the Company by Karen Pflaeging. This is more constructive than it sounds. So this is a really, really good book. I really recommend it to anyone doing consulting. And here's one of my preferred books of all times. Philosophical, it is really about consulting and analyzing or a critical look at the consulting industry through the lens of the philosopher. So this is really a book I've bought a dozen copies already through my life, and gave these copies to other people, to warn them and for them to learn. So this is called The Management Myth: Why the Experts Keep Getting It Wrong, by Matthew Stewart, who is a philosopher by training and who also acted as a consultant himself. And he interweaves his own story in consulting firms with terrible stories that he tells, with a critique of major management gurus. So this is a very, very interesting, very rich book, really. I can only recommend to get it. So yeah, management consulting is a terrible industry by now. I think it has become equivalent of con by now. So in a way, we are in this talk or in our conversations that we are having, or that we will have about beta consulting, we will not refer to it as the holy grail of anything, the salvation of anything, but an industry that is profoundly flawed and has been so for a while. But still, we cannot do differently than to advise organizations as well when we want to promote organizational transformation. We have to slip into the consulting role. So books like these, they are. It's important to understand the ethics. And also an author here who I really love, who talked about these ethical things, David Maister. Not around anymore, I think, at least not active. True Professionalism. He wrote quite a bunch of great books around the consulting profession, very constructive books. So this is an author to read. We will get to Alan Weiss later a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to bring in one of the core tenet of, and this is again in my prep today. I wanted to go back to the Alan Weiss work, which obviously we'll talk about some of his books. But what is the purpose of a consultant?
Yes.
And he says very distinctly, it's to improve the client's condition.
Yes.
Right? It is so basic, and as it's not to improve your own position as a consultant, your own bottom line. That we want to have survivability and profit. But in Matsukado's book, she kind of goes into it at first, and she explains the concept of rent seeking, and that's the idea of you're kind of surfing on value, and that you're just extracting more and more value. You're extracting value upon. It's this idea of unethical profit seeking.
That's that's to honor Mariana Mazzucato's work a little bit here. I think she's one of the most important economists we have today. And this distinction she offers between value creation and value extraction, it's very important, right? Of course, she has in the past critically analyzed the finance in that, and now she moves on to criticizing the consulting industry, rightfully so. Because it's, there are TV shows about this. House of Lies, I think.
House of Lies, yes.
Yeah, and sadly, all that is way too close to reality, right? It's an industry that has been focusing ever more on value extraction. Maybe this started with Bruce. What was the founder of Boston Consulting Group? Bruce Henderson in the 1970s, who invented the Boston BCG chart.
The BCG matrix, the cash cows and the dogs, and that's.
So he unleashed the Kraken, or opened Pandora's box in industrializing. Of course, the BCG matrix and other tools started in helping to industrialize this profession, and actually deprofessionalizing it at the same time, right? So every fool with a college degree, or even without today, can be a consultant. Everybody can be a consultant and place quackery and extract value from others. Of course, there's a problem on the demand side as well, people accepting this kind of shit. But beta consulting, we want to clearly distinguish it from that, right? We want to make it about value creation, not value extraction.
And I think but
the beta consultant must also make a living. I think Alan Weiss would be the first to accentuate. Of course, the consultant has to make a living. Yeah, so it's not
Well,
about not earning money or not taking a fee. It's about first improving the client's condition and live from it.
but this is and another one of the things I thought about. What when we talk about beta consulting, what does it mean in the lens of the 12 principles? What does that mean? You hit on the principle of monomaximization, and in that, or not, that all around success, I should say, not that if you're only thinking, I only want to make a profit, I need to make a profit, I need to make this sale from the client, I'm incentivized to make this sale from the client through my pipeline and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah.
And again, at all costs, I only want to make a profit. But no, I want to make sure that I am in right relationship with myself and ethics, with the planet, what is good for the planet, what is good for communities, all those kind of those things that what make the 12 principles fit for humanity and working in that. And the other thing that you kind of touched on, the value creation versus value extraction, the idea of, as a consultant, do you want to create a dependent relationship where the client they're always coming to you for knowledge and trusting you, or do you want to be in partnership with the client so that they build their own capabilities?
Yes.
And they can do more of what they are in business or in government service to do. So that I think is another distinction to make. Are you about creating this ongoing churn of work into your pipeline only for yourself, or are you into helping clients authorize themselves to deliver the value that they want to deliver? So.
Yes, I mean, we are talking here in BetaCodex Live always in the context of the BetaCodex and beta organizations and so on, and beta transformation. And now, as we turn in this 13th episode of our series to beta consulting, we might add that certainly beta consulting deserves a few principles, or there must be a few principles. The BetaCodex provides 12 important principles for organizations, but to help organizations transform, you might have to add a few principles, have a few additional principles. And of course, but we should, I think we are likely to discuss some of these principles during this session and possible others. And I think one that you kind of hinted at already is the how do you produce ethics in consultant partnership, in consultants?
Yes.
The consulting relationship. And I think there are quite a few principles that I apply and that I would recommend every beta consultant to apply. One would be never get paid by time, unit of time. Of course, we got this from Alan Weiss. This is the first Alan Weiss book I ever got. In early 2003, I found this book and it saved my life. So, yes, great consulting challenges and how to surmount them. This was the first time I came, and I at the time I had already written a diploma thesis, so like a book on consulting, international consulting, and I'd never even scratched Alan Weiss's book. It seemed too unacademic, too unscientific, which it is. But still, it's highly philosophical, highly practical as well, and highly conceptual. So I can only recommend this book. But one of the key ideas, of course, of his was and is, and I have applied it for decades already, is never charge by unit of time. Never use daily fees, daily rates, or hourly rates, because that effectively inhibits actual consulting or trusted advisor, David Meister kind of relationship. So one shall never use hourly or daily rates. Yes, you can only join trusted relationship with a client organization, or an individual client in consulting if you charge by value, if you go with value-based fees. We don't have to go into detail there. And then there are other principles I would add. So, for example, always time box the relationship. Otherwise, you are a crook.
So
that'd be interesting to discuss as well.
That comes to open space beta, of course, right? And
yes,
and
this insight came a lot later than the one about not using time-based fees. Yes.
Yeah, well, and there's this sense of producing creative tension that you create this creative tension also that there's this. I think social density is kind of in that same vein about we or a sense of urgency. I think, and yeah, I mean that's many ways of saying that, but in idea of okay, now we're here, now we're going to do this, and okay, we may not be 100% complete by the end of this time box,
Yes.
but we know we're on this path. We know we're going to continue on this path.
Yes,
So
one of the essences of beta consulting is, I would say, and this could also be framed as a principle or just as a key concept. Beta consulting shall not disempower the client or people, actors at the client on the client side, right? So we shall not make decisions that the client should make, and that in turn means, and that's where the principles of time boxing and not charging by hourly or daily rate comes into play as well. Because we do not want to make a beta organization dependent on consultants, or an organization should not be depending on consultants. That's one of the points of Mariana Mazzucato's book with regards to public administration, but also looking at private companies. Yes, most consulting firms, of course, act more like zombies or suckers of energy, time, and wealth. So they are value extracting, in Mariana Mazzucato's words. And for a beta organization, of course, that kind of consulting would be counterproductive. Giving power to a consultant is totally opposed to reducing hierarchy and decentralizing decision making. So the beta consultant should take care that she or he does not disempower the organization and promote centralization of power, or worse, outsourcing of decision making to the client. So there are several principles, I think.
I think there's this also comes back into my opening about internalizing the principles and knowing what your point of view is on. Am I feeding the ego of this person? Am I just telling them what they want me to tell them so that they have cover, or so that they can blame the consultant if things go wrong, and they have their.
And that has been part of the business model of the large consulting firms, that you can blame them. You pay them a terrible amount of money so that you can blame them in case anything goes wrong. And but that's not consulting. That's not improving the client's condition. That's improving politics or supporting politics on the organizational side, on the client side. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And there's, and from the business, and again, another distinction again around the business model. Again, we talked about value-based fees versus time and materials kind of fees. So that's one distinction. And in the business model side of this, there's a guy named Jeff Marlowe, who I don't know if you've encountered him on LinkedIn, but he came from, I think there was Cambridge Consulting. He had been involved with Peter Senge at some time, but he described the consulting industry model very, very simply as finders, minders, and grinders. Right. So you have the partners of the firm, the rainmakers, going out there and finding the work. And then you have the managers who sit on the account for however long it is to keep that revenue coming in. And then you have all the green MBAs, all the folks that they pick from the business schools that come in, that they do the work. The junior consultants
that describes the large consulting firm's business model, right? Or the consulting industrial complex, how it works, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So
that's not, I think, what we want to promote. I think we promote beta consulting is around true professionals or let's take a spec. I mean, we could criticize the consulting industry forever, right, and bash it, as so many other people have done and rightly done, and we could do so, and we would enjoy it. It would be lovely. But if we look at a little bit more at, okay, what then is beta consulting? If we use it, I mean, we coined this term just for this spot,
Yes.
right? It's not a brand or anything, so don't take it too seriously. But if we distinguish common consulting and beta consulting, certainly beta consulting needs to match the challenge, the Alan Weiss thing.
The ethos.
Yeah, or axiom. Yeah, improves the client's condition. Okay, that's one thing. Another thing I would add would be an axiom by Edward Deming, who says that, well, profound knowledge cannot be sufficiently produced in the in the organization to improve it. There needs to be outside. Profound knowledge needs to be supported, delivered, supplied by the outside. You need outside help to get what Edward Deming calls profound knowledge. Yeah, let's say wisdom that goes beyond what you consider natural, normal, or doable, because your own system blinds you to the possibilities that it has. So you need the outside perspective. That's a very systems theory, systemic way of looking at consulting. The advantage of the consult is, okay, you may have knowledge, you may have theory or knowledge, and supply that to the client. You may even employ some, and methods that the client side doesn't have or use. But the main point is really this mirroring possibility, or this rubbing thing around possibilities, not really showing, because a book by a great author might help an organization to know what's needed to know, but still the exchange, or the, as we in systems theory call it, the irritation wouldn't be there. You need the consultant to constructively irritate the system. And this is certainly one of the elements of beta consulting, to provide this constructive irritation that leads to the client organization becoming capable of solving its own problems and overcoming the status quo that it's usually, or the current command and control system that it usually has.
And it's developing.
Thing.
Yeah, well, I think that leads to, there's two things again it leads to. It's the idea of developing practice, and that when you learn the rules of a game, you're not going to be fantastic at it the first time you pick up the ball and start playing, right? You have
mean as a consultant?
Well, no, I'm saying as an organization. So if you're consulting with an organization that they want to learn to play a new game, and just learning the rules on a sheet of paper or on a PowerPoint or what have you, that's the knowledge that doesn't create the mastery. So that's the one thought I had. The other thing, when you mentioned Deming, that brought up to mind another quote that in the prep for today I came up with, which is one of the Russ Akoff quotes, was about if you do the wrong thing more efficiently, you're just going to get wronger faster. It's better to do the right thing wrong because you can correct it. But that is an assumption that you have to know what the right thing you're shooting for is, and that so you can produce that, again, the profound knowledge, because you now know you have that tension between what is and what could be.
Yes, that's a good point, I think. And this brings us to the topic of tools, maybe, that tools alone cannot work, and that tools should not be the key delivery of consulting, never ever. That tools can support the delivery of profound knowledge, as Deming calls it, but they are not profound knowledge. Is that related to what you just said?
Yeah, I think so. I think you can't view the bottle, you can't view the label on the bottle from the inside. I think that's another axiom, that the observation of a system is like, and like you're saying, is only possible from the outside. But that any consultant is going to observe your situation. Now the question is maybe the ethical question too, is that, well, when you observe that situation, are you just going to tell the client what they want to hear? Or are you going to just say, oh, I know what he's looking for. I can give him exactly that. I can feed that sweet nectar of revenue into my pocket and know that I'm just selling snake oil. Or do we approach that uncomfortable conversation and no, well, the way that what you're telling me, the pain you're expressing, and you want to have a conversation that is honest and inquisitive and with sense of genuine inquiry, and just because they're asking you for something doesn't mean that's what they need. And
Yes.
I think, and to be able to actually, maybe not intuit is the right word, but to uncover that true need that underneath what's being,
that the client cannot truly understand fully. The client cannot fully understand what the client needs, because if the client knew, they would overcome the problem by themselves. So the client will always ask for something that's slightly nonsensical, naturally. Otherwise, they wouldn't need the consultant, So, and that's one of the great. That's a very. I mean, we are not making this up right now, right? This is one of the foundations of the consulting relationship, of advisory, that the client cannot know what she or he or they need to know, because they are blinded by their own reality, by their own system, in a way, by the normality or the culture, or however you might call this, of their own system. So, one of the key roles of the consultant would be to take the blinders away, or at least allow these flickers of reality for the client to receive, and also to mirror things and so on. So these are key roles of consulting. Very humble things, actually. Every fool could do it. It's really like the fool at the court of a medieval king or something like that. You don't have to be brilliant nor show the solution. You just have to show the glimpse of reality, or the counterintuitive insight, or the deliver a little bit of knowledge, or whatever it is. So very humble thing. Consulting is really. So sometimes I think the only thing that I teach to my clients when I do consulting with them is that I teach them to use better language or words, and that I kind of give them opportunity to start having very good conversations instead of lousy conversations. Yeah. So in a way, beta organization is not beyond the level of tools and practices and patterns. It's really the quality of interactions that a beta organizations needs at much higher. Just like a democracy in the United States or Germany or any other democratic country or republic in the world needs higher quality conversation than Stalinist regime or the Putinist regime in Russia. You do not need high quality conversation, and you actually drive out high quality conversation from an authoritarian system, right? It's in the nature of authoritarianism. You drive out real conversation that could lead to improving the system. Yeah, so that's why authoritarian regimes never have a big future, because they cannot produce improvement on a level that a democratic republic can have. So the same goes for alpha and beta. Alpha organizations drive out good conversation. I mean, actual discourse, actual reflection, self-reflection, insights, learning, the quality learning, or what Peter Singer calls the learning organization kind of quality. A beta organization produces that, like Toyota, Southwest Airlines, Handelsbanken, Gore, and so on. They produce this through higher quality interactions, and of course, during a consulting relationship, we must take care that we produce the capability to have these better conversations. So how do we do that? Not through the method alone. It needs to be practiced. There needs to be some practice, and the consultant shall not always be there. For example, I think one of the key insights of BetaConsulting that we think is important is to help the client have better, we call them tandem sessions, tandem meetings, tandem conversations, in which they socialize the changes around cell structure design and beta transformation and so on. And I'm never there. I have never been at a tandem at the client. It's very important that I'm not there, because otherwise I would be teaching or workshopping, which has its function maybe, but it shouldn't be frequent, and it shouldn't be often, and it shouldn't be loud. I do these things. I do some workshops with the client, but that really vanishes in the perception of the client organization compared to the higher level, conversations that they produce internally just without me, guided by me and supervised in a way and curated in a way. But I'm removed from this conversations, and that's very important. Of course, that's only possible if I'm not paid by the hour. So these things are related, right?
And you have the time box, and you get me for this long, and even in the open space beta frame, there's that burn-in period at the end that you're gone for 30 days at least. That's the time where the baby bird gets to fly, and
that's one of the qualities of BetaCodex, BetaConsulting, I think, as well too. So time box it and then go, then leave. Yeah. Give the client time to level up, as Daniel Masick calls it, like in gaming, where you solve the level, yay, I passed, and then the organization needs to level up themselves. They solve the game of transformation, and then they have to level up, and the client needs to walk away, and the consultant needs to walk away for at least a period of 30 days, so that this self-sufficiency on the new level of performance can be perceived and reflected about and sink in a way.
And I think this idea of the word that I have been indoctrinated to use is empowerment. But again, I'm talking about empowerment, but in the creation of knowledge in the consulting engagement, we are creating, and we're co-creating with the client a new body of organizational knowledge about how we do things here now. That this, who we are, how we do them, that's what gets created as the culture, right? So that as a output of that, who we are and what we do, and that what we do is this knowledge that we created, and it doesn't go away with the consultant. I just don't come in with my knowledge, sprinkle it on your organization, and go away. That is what tends to happen, and this is it was a thought that I had before, and then Matsukado's book just ramped it up there, that the consulting industry, they just kind of take that knowledge with them and go away, and it's not shared. It's very extracted.
Yes,
So I think that's part of the distinction, at least for me, is that we, in service of the client need, you want them to grow and to have that ownership of the knowledge that they are now capable of creating.
Yes. By the way, I went through all these mistakes of providing the knowledge and then walking away effectively. My first consulting project, I remember it well, in Brazil, large software company. I think I said all the right things, but saying them was part of the problem, And today, or with what I learned about consulting, actually advisory, of course, I learned that telling the client too much, over-telling, is part of the problem. Of course, over-explaining is part of the problem. Trying to give solutions as the consultant. You want to, of course, I still want to seem brilliant in front of my client, but I learned between the age of 30 when I started and now around 50, I learned to control my ego. So I want the client to discover the insight, discover the knowledge for themselves. So didactically, I'm not in the same industry anymore that I was
Yeah.
20 years ago. I'm doing everything differently. We turned everything. Oh, I learned to be a decent consultant, and to take care that, of course. I mean, let's give it a little bit of context here as well. We're talking about beta consulting, right? And when I started doing this kind of work in 2003, we were still calling the approach or the method beyond budgeting, right? The model, we called it beyond budgeting. And at the time, there was very little codification of the contents of beyond budgeting. I mean, I published a book in 2003, and then another one in 2006, and then a third one in 2009. So that was all good and well. So there were white papers and so on and stuff published, but it wasn't much. Now we already have a lot more of the knowledge codified in different ways. I mean, you can learn this stuff with Comenius or through books or through videos. Even our video series here humbly tries to contribute to that body of knowledge. So the consultant, I think, should this codification of knowledge around beta and beta transformation and the approaches you need, like open space beta, the codification, the writing, the explaining, the publication around, and so on. It also serves for the consultant to be less. You need less explaining to do. So when I do a workshop today at a company, I expect people who join in, who are invited to do this at the company, who are invited to engage seriously in this and to spend time on doing this. I expect them to read the books, to study, to get to go beyond the mere apprentice level themselves by studying, by getting knowledgeable, and then we can work, and that accelerates the whole process, because I do not have to do many workshops over explaining and explaining again, and which then creates a distance to the client. So I want the client, or we think it's necessary that this is what open space beta brings to the process as well. Everybody gets invited, and when the first open space happens, people are supposed to be prepared already. So they are all supposed to have read a book or two, and to have watched a few videos or read a few articles and whatever they need to prepare for Open Space 1. So they come very knowledgeable. And those who come to the Open Space, first Open Space, unknowledgeable.
Those who come to the first open space unknowledgeable are likely going to be left behind, I think is what you were going to say. We lost you for a second, but those who come to the first open space unknowledgeable are going to feel, and I just said, they're going to feel left behind. They are going to
feel awkward or uncomfortable, maybe feel a little bit of shame even, but they have themselves to blame, because they are invited not just to come, but to be prepared as well.
Well, I think
preparation is such a mind trick, right?
What's such a mind trick? That
invitation is such a mind fuck.
Oh yes,
yes. It's like democracy. It's a terrible mind fuck. This is not just about voting. This is about you being a citizen now, and that's way different than being a slave or.
Oh God! And so there's a couple other things here. Oh, well, looks like Niels' network connection just dropped off. So I was going to say something just fascinating that we could riff on again. Well, that would have been about. I think what I was going to say was about preparation, and that happens in presence of mind in the open space. So, well, looks like I'm going to sign off here. We're going to go to betacodex.org/live for our live Zoom session. And hopefully Niels will join us there. And if not, you'll have me on the session. And just to remember, this is going to be rebroadcast again later today on LinkedIn for those of you who might have caught this in the middle and want to check on the rest of it after we check out here. You can do that at 9 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. CET. So Niels has arrived back, and I think we'll say our goodbyes together. Welcome, welcome back.
I was so much in the flow, and then the connection got lost, right?
Well, I was just landing us here, letting folks know that the betacodex.org/live will go to Zoom here next. I did make a mention of that that story about people being prepared. It's in the principles, right? It's in the principles. It's presence of mind, being prepared, and that you're not going to come to this open space and just expect someone to be sage on the stage and give you the plans and say, I don't need to know anything going in and out. But the expectations are higher. And I think that also may be, that would be my final for this part one of the series is that there's a higher standard. In that consulting, the industry of consulting in general, it's about the people in it. And if you hold yourself to a higher standard, a standard of ethics and a standard of, just of high knowledge, of preparing yourself, I think that is the way to be going forward. More to come on that. So,
can I mention something that Alan Weiss always accentuates? Not sure if you've seen it already. He says that professionalism is not about being paid. You're not a professional because you got paid for what you're doing. Professionalism is to hold yourself up to the highest standards, to the highest standards of the profession. That's what professionalism is about. So that's why I also always recommend to read, David Maister and Alan Weiss, David Maister's books, not just these, but others too, if you like. And I think we will do another episode about more of this, how to do beta consulting, with what kind of impact and why and how.
Indeed, of course. Well, let's check back in here in a moment in the Zoom and see who we have to jam with there.
Yes.
Thank you, Niels.
Looking forward to that conversation. And it was lovely with you, as always, Ryan.
As always, fantastic.
See you on the other side on Zoom.
See you on the other side. Thanks, everybody. We shall see you in Zoom.